In order to make progress, I needed to find the people who had been arrested for the alleged rustling. Nobody seemed to know where they lived, and I didn't have their names. All I had was the father who was arrested along with his son lives in Nettleton. So we drove 10 miles to Nettleton, thinking it would be another tiny little place and he would be easy to find. It turned out Nettleton is bigger than I thought, so I headed straight for the local intelligence gathering establishment. It was mid-afternoon, the pub was empty apart from one man sitting at the bar. I bought a drink and struck up a conversation. In my research, I have found that public houses can be a source of priceless intelligence. I mentioned to the man at the bar the case of the 1,500 missing sheep, and he immediately said, "Oh, that'll be Arthur, he lives just down that street over there." I couldn't believe my luck, so I went to knock on the door of the 62-year-old shepherd that had been arrested along with his son and daughter-in-law.
Right, I've just knocked on the door of the man who was arrested for the sheep rustling, and he's informed me he seemed a very honest, genuine guy. He's got no previous history or anything like that. That 3 weeks ago the police cleared him completely of having anything to do with any sheep rustling, and also the other 2 people who were also arrested have been completely cleared, right? And that has not been put in the media. Apparently the landowner basically gave the police a tip off. He thought that these people were involved, but it turns out that they weren't involved. So there is no explanation as to who has rustled these sheep. Now this guy is an experienced shepherd. He reckons you would need 5 wagons, each of them 3-tiered. He said you would need 2 or 3 dogs. And the other thing that he said was, if you were going to do something like that, every person along the chain would have to be in on the crime. In other words, the driver, the people rounding up the sheep, the people at the abattoir, any checks that the vehicle would have to go through, etc. The landowner. He said everyone would have to be on it. He said there's no way you could carry this off without basically the police finding out or being exposed. So it's the disappearance of these 1,500 sheep has clearly caused a rift between the landowner and the people who were looking after the sheep, and there's no resolution of this. So the sheep have not turned up, no one has been found guilty of anything. So the BBC and other mainstream news outlets were quite happy to report, oh, 3 people have been arrested, but they were not happy to report that 3 people were not charged and 3 people have now been completely cleared. And this guy is asking his solicitor if he will ask the police and the media to report that he has been cleared, and he's not sure that they're going to do that. He had clearly had a rough time with this. That was obvious from speaking to him, but he didn't want to be interviewed for obvious reasons, and he stated that the other people who have been implicated also probably would not want to be interviewed. They just want to put this behind them. Really, the UFO explanation is still well and truly possible, in my opinion.
I was a little disappointed that Arthur did not go on camera. He was a genuine person, and I could tell he was perplexed by the whole thing. This would have come over well on camera. I got the feeling he was a little suspicious of me, so I gave him my telephone number and asked him to contact me if he changed his mind and wanted to go on camera for a TV show. So, no suspects, no witnesses, and we have a huge UFO witnessed during the same month just 12 miles away from the field. Could there be a UFO connection? We headed back to the area and decided to find a place to camp out for the night. It was midsummer, and we chose a campsite right in the middle of the increasingly weird Lincolnshire Triangle.
Okay, we're in Alford and we're going to stay at a campsite, so we're going to actually camp out this evening in the Lincolnshire Triangle, and to get there we have to go along the A157, which according to Wikipedia is Britain's 6th windiest road.
Bear right.
And apparently Britain's windiest road is a roundabout. Nothing coming, but yes, So we'll be in a campsite in the middle of nowhere in the Lincolnshire Triangle. Ooh. On our way to the caravan park, or the camping park. Red sky at night, Shepherd's Delight. 1,500 sheep missing, not Shepherd's Delight. Right, just turned up at the caravan park and it's basically just an empty field. And we're the only ones, the only tent here. Right, we've managed to get the tent up before it's got completely dark. No, this is not Blair Witch Project, this is Richplanet TV. Now, it's 1 o'clock, 1 AM, and we, as I say, we are in the Lincolnshire Triangle. So it's a perfectly clear night, the stars are out, so I'm going to put my head outside the tent. Right, I'm standing outside the tent now, and yeah, I can see quite a lot of stars. The only light I can see in front of me is there's a farmhouse about 300 yards in front. I'll just zoom in, and it's just got one light, just a window. That's the only light about, really. This sleeping bag's like a complete cocoon, I can't move. Okay, I've come back in the tent. There's nothing to report, so I'm going to switch off and get some sleep. Maybe it's the night off tonight. Cock-a-doodle bloody do. Oh, what time is it? Oh, there would have to be a flipping cockerel right in the next field. Right, it's 7:30 and it's peeing down, so we'll have to hope this rain subsides so I can put the tent back in the car. I guess it's one of the rules of the universe, if you go camping, it rains, and the dog shits outside your tent and you stand in it when you get up in the morning. So I'm going to try and find the toilets. As you can see, it's still peeing down, and that was fun, taking the tent down in the rain.
A few days later on my journey back to the northeast, I got a call on my mobile from a Detective Constable Nick Jones, the same officer who spoke on the radio about the missing sheep. I recognised his voice immediately. I pulled over into a service station to record my recollection of the call.
Okay, now it was 5 days ago when I spoke to the gentleman who was implicated with the missing sheep. I've just had a phone call from the detective from Louth, who is the detective involved in the case of this missing sheep, of the missing sheep. Now, I recognise his voice. It was the detective that was interviewed on the BBC website. Now, first thing he said to me was, have you spoken to this gentleman? I said, yeah, because I'm interested in the story. He said, well, why have you called him? I said, well, I'm doing an article about it. He said, an article for what? I said, well, it's actually for my TV show. He said, which TV show? I said, Richplanet TV. He said, is that a legitimate TV show? I said, yes. Then he said, well, how did I find out about it? I said, well, it was on the BBC website. That was when I first found out about it. He said, fair enough. And then he seemed a bit suspicious at first. He obviously thought that he couldn't understand why there was someone questioning this guy. I said to him, it's a very interesting case because it's such a large number of sheep. It's Britain's largest alleged rustling incident. I said to him, I'm doing an article on it because I've got my own theory on this. And then he says to me, get this, he said, really? He says, I'd be very interested to know what your theories are. And it was blatantly obvious from the conversation with him that he has no clue as to what's happened to these sheep. And he said to me there was no evidence that any loaders or trucks had been there. I said to him, well, there would have been wool all over that entrance if there'd been 1,500 sheep come through there, you know, in the hedges and in the gate and on the floor. There would have been droppings on the floor, there would have been big tyre tracks, etc. And he said there was no evidence that there'd been any vehicles at that entrance point, and according to him there's no evidence that there's been any trucks there. So he was definitely perplexed. He doesn't know what's caused it because he's obviously interviewed the people who were implicated and the landowner, and obviously all of these people have been cleared.
When I got back, I submitted a Freedom of Information request to ask for photographs which may have been taken of the gate, which was the only point where the sheep could have been taken. However, they did not provide any information and pointed me to the article on the BBC website. Fat lot of good that is. I checked the photographs I had taken of the lock on the gate. The padlock looks fairly old. One would have thought if the lock had been broken during the theft, a new lock would have been put on the gate. I decided to ring Detective Constable Nick Jones to ask him about the gate and the lock and whether there was any evidence that the gate had been broken into.
Hello, Nick Jones.
Hello Nick, this is Richard Hall. I spoke to you a few weeks ago about the missing sheep case at near Donington.
Oh, yes.
I've been doing a little bit more research, just looking into it, and if I do find it, because I've got a completely open mind on the whole thing, if I did find anything pointing to criminal activity, you have my word that I would report it to you immediately in total confidence. That's just the first thing I wanted to say. But I just wanted to ask if you would be able to give me any information on the actual gate and the lock, because I've had a look at the lock on the gate and it's not a new lock. Do you know if the gate was open or closed when the first person appeared on the sorry?
It was closed.
It was closed. And was there a lock on the gate?
I don't know off the top of my head, mate, to be honest.
You don't know off the top of your head, right?
No.
But the gate was closed. And the other thing about that field is, if you go through it, and as you go along it, it goes down into a very deep gorge.
It does, yeah.
And then there's a kind of a removable portion of the fence at the bottom of that gorge. Do you know if that was intact? Or had that been... Or do you know if there was sheep on the other side of that fence?
There was on the other side of the valley, yeah.
Right, so there were sheep there as well, and they'd all gone, yeah?
No, they were still there.
Oh, they were still there? So, what are you saying? Everything the other side of that fence was still there?
Yeah.
Okay, and had that missing portion of the gate been touched at all, or?
As far as I'm aware, everything that was gated and locked was still intact.
Right. Okay. But the gate was closed, and again, any evidence of any vehicles there?
No, nothing at all.
Okay. But you don't know whether the gate was still padlocked. You just know that it was closed.
Yeah, I seem to remember it was padlocked as well.
It was padlocked as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so everything in that...
As it is today, still in situ, not been touched at all.
Right, okay. And is... I was just going to ask you, that Mr. Dennis, I've tried to contact him, I haven't been able to get in touch with him. I see he's installed cameras in various places, because he's obviously trying to find out information about people in the area. Were you aware of that?
No, I wasn't aware of that.
There's two cameras. I mean, I don't know whether you want to know this, whether you're interested. It's, you know where the RAF tower is?
Yes.
There's two houses there next to it.
Yeah.
On that corner there, there's a little CCTV camera. Well, there's two, and it's kind of pointing. If you were to drive around that corner, it's quite a sharp corner.
Yeah,
it would capture the driver, and I believe he's installed those.
Right.
So, for my own knowledge, that suggests to me that he's not implicated, kind of thing, because I know that there was a bit of finger pointing going on, but...
No, definitely not. We did a good financial investigation on him, and he's no worries and doesn't need to claim on his insurance, that's for sure.
Right, okay.
Certainly in the black rather than the red, that's for sure.
Right, okay. Alright then, well, thanks very much. I mean, I just thought really it was just to ask you about the gate, because I took a little photograph of the padlock, and it's not a new padlock, which suggests that it could be
broken in the first place.
It wasn't broken, yeah. Okay. All right then, Nick. But if in my sort of travels, because I've spoken to a few people in the village and that kind of thing, if I do find anything that is the remotest bit suggestive of criminal activity, I will contact you and I'll let you know.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Now. Cheers. Bye now. Bye. Let's just summarise some of what we now know. There are no suspects. There is no evidence of an insurance job. There is no physical evidence. There are no witnesses. The field was padlocked and all entrances were undisturbed, showing no evidence of rustling. A huge egg-shaped UFO was witnessed in the area during the same month. What does the evidence point to? Does it point to this? Or does it point to this? If you live in the Lincolnshire area and have witnessed anything you think may be of interest to this case, please get in touch via the richplanet.net website. One final question we should ask ourselves. Let's assume these sheep were taken by a UFO, and that UFO is not of human origin. What are these sheep being used for? The most likely answer, in my opinion, is as a source of protein. Protein for who or what? We'll leave that question for another show.